behalf of our incredible city and the National League of Cities, we are here today to highlight the need for action on an issue that matters to Houston and thousands of cities across the country: rail safety. Earlier this year, a train derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, carrying toxic chemicals that had to be burned off, causing full-scale evacuations of the city for the safety of their citizens, leaving all city leaders with deep concerns about the railroad tracks in our backyards. The facts are clear. About 3 times every day, a train leaves its tracks and derails, and about half that time, a hazardous substance is on board. So what happened in East Palestine could happen in any city, large or small. In fact, since East Palestine, we have seen derailments and even evacuations from Minnesota to Washington, to Pennsylvania to Montana. Across Texas, we have more derailments than almost any other state in the nation, second only to Georgia, and followed closely by Ohio. And behind us, right here in this neighborhood, are some of the nation's most frequently blocked rail crossings, creating safety concerns every day for our residents. In the last year, more than 26,000 blocked rail crossings have been reported to the Federal Railroad Administration, and almost 1 in every 5 reported that an emergency vehicle could not cross, or that a pedestrian was seen climbing over or under the train, and sometimes both. Children climbing over blocked trains to go to school is not acceptable. When cities are forced to evacuate and push people out of their homes in the middle of the night, we should act so that no other city has to relive these horrors. Congress cannot wait to address America's rail safety issues. Congress sets the safety bar for America's railroads, and only Congress has the authority to make rail safer in the United States. The good news is that Senators Vance and Brown from Ohio have introduced common sense, bipartisan legislation in the Senate, and last week the Commerce Committee voted to advance it. America's cities, towns, and villages are united in asking our senators and representatives to pass rail safety legislation and send it to the President's desk for signature before another tragedy strikes our communities. From Houston to Brunswick, Maryland, Hammond, Indiana, Village of Rickton Park, Illinois, Reynolds, Georgia, to Jamestown, North Dakota, to Altoona, Pennsylvania, we all want to see this rail safety bill. It is now my honor to introduce the mayor of the city of Houston, Mayor Sylvester Turner, to share how Houston has taken on our challenges with rail safety. Mayor Turner.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Pro Tem. Look, I'm pleased to be here with you along with representatives from the National League of Cities, representatives from our 2 women, Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. And of course, we're in District I, represented by Councilmember Robert Gallegos. The city of Houston is home to several key manufacturing industries in the country. These factories and distributors rely heavily on an extensive transportation network consisting of highway, water, airways, and rail corridors. This administration has worked diligently to improve traffic flow and reduce congestion on our streets by strengthening the roadway infrastructure and removing street hazards such as stalled vehicles. Trains operating in our neighborhoods create additional traffic congestion, and due to federal regulations, the city has limited means and authority over railroad operations. Each day, about 114 trains operate throughout Houston, and at times rail traffic can increase to 124 a day. This high volume of trains with lengths well over a mile or more will cause traffic delays, and when a stoppage occurs, trains will block a railroad crossing on an average of 20 minutes or more, and 20 minutes is being very conservative. A single stop train affects more than 1 motorist, and these occurrences make Houstonians at risk by delaying emergency response and erodes quality of life by reducing mobility of people going to work, home, or school. Block crossings are a rail safety issue that's happening in Houston and in thousands of other communities across the country. Across the country, mayors and council members and fire chiefs are doing everything we can using technology, adding fire hoses, houses, doing overpasses and underpasses, but it's not enough. And I know Vice Mayor Pro Tem will be introducing many of our council members who are here, as well as Chief Pena, who are standing in solidarity this morning. Congress must pass the Railway Safety Act, bipartisan legislation, which will help prevent toxic train derailments and ensure rail moves safely through our communities and our country. Block crossings prevent emergency services from getting where they need to be in time, stop children from getting to school, parents from getting to work, and grandparents from getting to doctor's appointments. These block crossings are a frequent occurrence in communities of all sizes across the country. Along with block crossings, derailments are not a rare problem for cities to deal with. 3 trains derailed each day in the United States, and close to half of trains are reported to be carrying a hazardous substance as trains get longer. Experts have made it clear that derailments are preventable with good maintenance, safety standards, and technology. And Congress must set that safety performance bar or continue to watch community after community bear the economic consequences of train derailments. The risk is too high to our communities. And I'm urging Texas Senator Cornyn and Senator Cruz to support this common sense legislation to keep rail safety on track. And this administration is working tirelessly to reduce impacts caused by stopped train events. So left unchecked, block crossings create community instability, affecting public safety and quality of life. And it is important that we act, and we act now. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Mayor Turner. Next, I'm going to ask if the council member of District I, where we stand, will come forward. Houston City Council Member Robert Gallegos, who has been a true champion on this issue. Councilmember Gallegos.
Thank you. Good morning. First of all, let me thank the mayor for being here, Mayor Pro Tem Dave Martin, of course, Vice Mayor Pro Tem Cassix Tatum, and my 2 colleagues, Councilmember Alcorn and Councilmember Kamen, for being here and joining us this morning. Again, I'm Robert Gallegos. I represent District I. We are also in Congressional District 29, which is one of the busiest corridors in regards to rail traffic and blockage of trains in our crossings here. I want to thank the National League of Cities for being here in District I this morning, raising awareness and advocating for solutions. As the mayor mentioned, enhancing rail safety and improving mobility is of utmost importance in the city of Houston and the many communities adjacent to tracks, crossings, and rail yards. Within Houston city limits alone, we have over 700 active and busy grade crossings. Many of those are located in my district, here on the east side, where in the last few years we have seen significant increases in rail traffic that have impacted safety, mobility, and the overall quality of life of our neighborhoods. And there was recently a merger between Canada Pacific and Kansas City Southern, which we've been told that's going to increase rail traffic in the city of Houston by 8 more trains. And that just started, there was one train going north to Canada and one coming south going into Mexico through the city of Houston, which started last Friday. Making things more challenging on the east side is the presence of 3 highly active rail corridors that crisscross our community, forming a triangle dubbed the Train Trap Triangle. On a regular basis, 1 of 2 of these tracks is occupied by stopped trains multiple times per day, blocking numerous streets and critical crossings. We've even experienced instances where stopped trains have occupied all 3 tracks simultaneously, leaving the community along with 5 schools and a very busy fire station completely encircled by stopped trains. And unfortunately, it's why this part of town leads the country in block crossing complaints. In 2021, over 1,300 of the state's 2,800 complaints originated from the east side of Houston. These blockages can last for several minutes to hours. And unfortunately, they are isolated cases or rare occurrences, The frequency and the amount of time these intersections are obstructed is highly problematic and concerning from both a safety and a mobility standpoint. In fact, through a smart camera pilot program the city launched, we have documented multiple instances in which major thoroughfares, including those vital to Houston emergency response, have been blocked for hours at a time. These prolonged blockages have motorists stranded, prompting unsafe motorist and pedestrian behavior, and too frequently force emergency responders to scramble to find alternate and longer routes. It's simply unacceptable. None of us should accept these situations: blocked crossings, idling locomotives next to homes, diverted ambulances, motorists rushing to beat the train, and children risking their lives to get to school. This isn't good for the safety of communities, and I want to thank the National Leagues of Cities for their work and advocacy, and I urge our congressional leaders to pass rail safety legislation to protect communities and hold the railroads accountable. Thank you all again for being here.
Thank you, Councilmember Gallegos. Next, we'll hear from Mary Gill. She's the owner of Segundo Coffee Lab here at Ironworks, and she's going to give us a personal account of the impact of the stop trains from a business perspective. Ms. Gill?
Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. My name is Martha Gill. I am the co-founder of Segundo Coffee Lab. Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. My name is Martha Gill, and I am co-founder of Segundo Coffee Lab and also a resident of the East End. I'm here to talk about how the train affects us on a daily. There's times where the train sits 3 to 4 hours, and a privately owned business is affected up to 40 to 50% negatively. And the most important thing that I want to say is that the stress and the chaos that it causes when you're driving or taking your child to school, and the school doesn't even have anything in place to be able to help prevent this, or any of us. Everyone always asks, why do you keep on speaking on this subject? Because I feel like together, if we speak up, we can do a change. Everyone is starting to listen. Everybody is starting to, help out the community. And this is something that I'm very continue to speak on, not just for myself, not just for my business, but for the future to come. Buenos días, soy Marta Gil, soy la dueña de Segundo Coffee Lab y también soy residente de East End. Estoy aquí para hablar, para decir que el tren a veces se sienta aquí, atrás de los otros, 3 o 4 horas. Afecta nuestros números negativamente hasta 40-50% a veces. Y para hacer un negocio privado, eso afecta mucho. También soy mamá, llevo a mis niños todos los días a la escuela. Cuando el tren está aquí, el estrés que hace para los otros, que algo que es 15 minutos para dejar a nuestros niños, se hace como 1 hora, hora y media para dejar a nuestros niños. Quería hablar de esto para que todos sepan lo que está pasando en nuestra comunidad. Tenemos que hacer algo juntos para cambiar. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. And next, we will hear from Fire Chief Sam Pena, who will talk about how public safety is impacted by these rail issues. Chief Pena?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Vice Mayor Pro Tem. My name is Sam Pena. I'm the Fire Chief for the City of Houston. And certainly a derailment could be catastrophic. It'll capture the news cycle. But more immediate for us in emergency response is the day-to-day impact that it's having on our ability to respond to emergencies. We do track the number of times that our emergency response vehicles have to divert or change direction as a result of a blocked train. We're averaging about 90 instances per month. And that is, those are emergency responses that are impacted as far as the time it takes us to get to that emergency. We understand the rail system is a vital part of our community. We understand the need to coexist. I do want to give credit to Union Pacific for trying to work with us in some technology. We have about 14 at-grade intersections that are being monitored, and it gives us some idea of when the trains are crossing, but more needs to be done. We are in favor of this act. We do think that we need more tools in the toolbox to ensure that the rail crossings are not impacted to the degree that they have been. Blocks trains and stop trains impact commerce, they increase risk, and they impact our ability to respond efficiently. So anything that could be done to ensure that we are being good neighbors, that we're providing access and not blocking these at-grade crossings for 20 minutes plus is going to be a benefit for our entire community. Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you, Chief Pena. We appreciate that. And it is Infrastructure Week, so we are glad to have the Director of Houston Public Works with us here today. Director Haddock, we're ready to hear from you now.
Good morning. My name is Carol Haddock. I'm the Director of Houston Public Works. And I want to thank everybody here for allowing us an opportunity to represent Houston Public Works, but also to talk a little bit about infrastructure. It's been a great few weeks. We started off with Houston Water Week. Water Week the last week of April. We had Public Service Week last week for all public employees, federal, state, and local. This week is Infrastructure Week, and next week is Public Works Week. So it is a number of weeks where we represent those people who have chosen their profession to be serving the public. I do want to say that we are fully behind and support the passage of this federal bill on rail safety, but I also want to pause and say thank you for the significant investment that has been committed by the Congress to infrastructure throughout the United States. We are very thankful to the Biden administration and Congress for these bills that have brought significant infrastructure funding. We're currently waiting, and I want to speak forward to the future and the hope that we see on changes on the ground here. Because of previously passed bills, we're currently waiting on announcements for the railroad crossing elimination gap that was part of the infrastructure bill, which, with awarded, would close the funding gap for the Commerce Navigation grade separation, the York-Sampson grade separation, and we've also requested an additional $38 million from the Rail Administration. This funding, if awarded, would provide long-term significant investments in this community to directly address what what we're out here to talk about today. I don't know about y'all. I was sitting on the other side of the train, a little bit nervous that I was not going to be here in time for the press conference, and it was a train that was moving, one that was doing exactly what it's supposed to do. These funding sources and these projects, if awarded, will allow Houston Public Works to work with our regional partners and the newly formed Houston Area Rail Transformation, HART, to take a programmatic approach to eliminate rail crossings. Not the rails themselves, but to eliminate those at-grade crossings where we have the most conflict between vehicles, our emergency responders, our pedestrians, our children trying to get to school when the school's on the other side of that rail, and to do this in a programmatic way where we can have a meaningful long-term impact and benefit to this community while recognizing the importance of rail freight, both for the environment but also for the economy in this community. These are long-term solutions. They will improve safety. They will improve mobility. As currently we see many of our major streets are cut off that are temporarily severed. And even these slow-moving trains can have impacts. You heard from a local business that have these impacts. And so we look forward to the investments that are going to result in meaningful change in these communities. But we also look forward to continued action at the federal level to implement common sense changes that will improve rail safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Haddock. And next we will hear from Chris McCarthy, who is the Deputy Chief of Staff for Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia. We are in her district. She is the Congresswoman of the 29th Congressional District. Chris?
Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for having us. The Congresswoman is on her way back to Washington to continue to work on these issues, so she can't be here this morning. But this is an issue that has been a long time coming in our neighborhoods. If you look at the Federal Rail Administration's blocked crossing portal, the 29th District of Texas has almost double the number of complaints as the second highest district in the country. So this is an issue that is extremely specific to our area, but is also now getting attention nationally. The Congresswoman has worked hard to increase funding for the programs that will help eliminate these issues. For the next several years, thanks to work through appropriations in the infrastructure law, the Consolidated Rail Safety Improvements in Infrastructure grant will provide additional funding to cities, states, and towns to improve the safety and crossing technology, which will help eliminate the need to have people waiting at these crossings and increase the safety overall. Additionally, the Congresswoman has introduced again the Don't Block Our Communities Act. This is the D-Block Act for short. This is a bill that will allow the Federal Rail Administration to issue fines when trains block crossings for more than 10 minutes repeatedly. This is an issue in the East End, all over Houston and the country, but it's particularly bad here, and as you heard from the fire chief, it's a public safety matter. It's a matter of kids getting to school on time, of parents getting kids to doctor's appointments, and it's the number one thing we hear about in our district from our constituents is that this is an issue that matters to them. So Congresswoman Garcia stands with everyone here. We know that there's a lot of work to do, but she's going to continue working on it. And if the blocked crossings are an issue to you and you're watching this, please reach out to your federal elected representatives, whether it's a member of Congress or the Senate or the House, and let them know that you want them as well to co-sponsor the Don't Block Our Communities Act. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next we'll hear from Lily Coney. She is the Chief of Staff for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee of the 18th Congressional District. Ms. Coney?
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for being here today to cover this important issue. Congresswoman Jackson Lee is unable to be here because she is in D.C. for fallen police officer ceremony that's taking place on the Capitol today. She asked that I be here today on her behalf to indicate her appreciation and full support for the goals of S. 576, the Rail Safety Act. Congresswoman Jackson Lee thanks Senator Sherrod Brown and J.D. Vance of Ohio for leading this effort to enact this law. S. 579 addresses safety requirements for rail carriers and trains transporting hazardous materials. Specifically, the Department of Transportation must issue safety regulations for trains carrying hazardous materials, to require that rail carriers or shippers provide state emergency response commissioners with advance notice and information about the hazardous materials, reduce blocked rail crossings, and comply with certain requirements regarding train length and weight specifications, track standards, speed restrictions, and response plans. The Department of Transportation must also establish requirements for way defect detectors. This is contributing factors to rail derailments, such as hot bed detectors or roller bearing heat detection, dragging equipment detectors, high car detectors, and slide fences all reduce the incidence of rail derailments. These are important steps that need to be taken in order to keep communities safe. S. 579 directs DOT to issue regulations establishing requirements for installation, repair, testing, maintenance, and operation of wayside defect detectors for each rail carrier operating a train carrying hazardous material. The bill also increases the maximum fines DOT may impose on rail carriers for violating safety regulations, requires DOT to update rail car inspection regulations, and audit the federal inspection program, requires a minimum two-person crew for certain freight trains, phases out certain railroad tank cars by May 1st, 2025, which is 4 years sooner than required under current law. The bill expands training for local first responders, imposes a new fee on certain rail carriers, and provides funding for research and development to improve rail safety. All of these are important steps that the federal government can take to make communities safer, to be more responsive to the causes and the consequences of blocked crossings. Congresswoman Jackson Lee has worked for well over a couple of decades on the issue of blocked crossings, as well as materials that are being carried by rail through residential communities and areas, seeking to find solutions in direct dialogue with rail companies, as well as bringing communities into these conversations so they can hear directly from constituents about the pressing issue of addressing this problem. She is pleased to join in this effort, and thank you all for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Across the country, communities are united in protecting our residents. You've heard from several speakers today, and I also want to thank the council members that have joined us. Several of the council members from Houston City Council also signed on to our rail safety letter. We appreciate that. Over 500 cities have signed on to that letter urging Congress for this Rail Safety Act. Mayor Pro Tem Dave Martin, thank you for being here. Councilmember Sally Alcorn, thank you for being here. Councilmember Abby Kaming, Kamen, who is on the NLC Energy and Environment Committee. Thank you for being here. And you heard from Councilmember Gallegos. And then we also have Veronica Gorchinsky, the president of the East End District here. We also have the president of the Hispanic Chamber, Laura Murillo. Thank you for being here. And then I want to say a special thanks to Jesse Bounds and Jack Hanegraaff for the great work that they've done to provide the information that we need to make sure we amplify this message across the nation. We call on Congress to help us keep America's railroads moving safely through our communities by passing legislation soon. Lives depend on it. Thank you all for being with us today, and we're happy to open it up for any questions that you may have. So we are hoping that the legislation that has been moved forward will make it to the president's desk. What we are urging now is for everyone to reach out to their senators and representatives to encourage the passage of this legislation. It makes it to the president's desk, and then we have a law. We are encouraged by the action that was taken last week, but we still have a ways to go. So it is press conferences like this and action that we can all take that will push us to get that action quicker. We're hoping that people will continue to urge their congressmen and women to support this legislation so we can see some movement quickly.
As Director Haddock pointed out, there is an application for grant funding for railroad crossing that is currently being considered. I was in D.C. about 3 weeks ago talking with representatives of the Federal Railway Administration, and hopefully before the summer is out, hopefully we'll get some good news on that front as well. Well, I think you have to bear in mind that for the first time in a long time, you have the bipartisan infrastructure bill that is passed. This is Infrastructure Week. That is historic level of funding for infrastructure. In the past, we've had a lot of conversation, but no funding. Now, at least we have funding. And there are about 700 to 800 railroad crossings just in the city of Houston alone. So there's no question there's a tremendous need. A lot of attention is now being given. And so all across the country right now, you have cities like the city of Houston who are standing up and insisting that Congress take some definitive action to address these subjects. And you all have reported, like others, where there have been trains that have gone off track, that are carrying very dangerous chemicals, that are literally disrupting communities and putting people's lives at stake. And just right here, when trains are stopping for 2-3 hours and people are not able to get where they need to go. So as more voices and more people come together and we gather like we're doing today, then I think you're going to see some definitive action. But in the immediate need, Congress can vote on the Rail Safety Act, and then we are hopeful that we'll get some significant funding, or at least the announcement on it, before the summer is out, and that will allow us, with the funding, to start taking some definitive steps right here in the East End.
If there are no other questions, oh, we have a question here. Yes, ma'am.
Well, there's been a lot of discussion on that, and as you know, Metro has already made that one announcement in terms of going underneath. It's always difficult to try to find a holistic solution, and a part of that is being able to work with the railroad company itself because they have a lot to say what the end result will be. But I know I've had extensive conversation with the chairman of Metro, Sanjay Ram, and I know they're trying to work through these issues. And I know they're working in collaboration, or at least having some conversations with Houston Public Works as well.
And in regards to your question about Lockwood, I know that Metro has met with the community, and the community is wanting preferring an underpass, but it's just for the BRT, not for vehicular traffic. But the good thing about it is that once it's built by Metro, the underpass just for the BRT on Lockwood, it will also be used by emergency vehicles. So we'll be able to get ambulances, fire trucks, and police cars to go underneath the stop train there at Lockwood. So that's good news. And then with the infrastructure bill that was mentioned, we're looking at also having a grade separation at Sampson and York, if it gets approved, that is. And then also, like Director Haddock mentioned, there at Franklin and Jensen, also a grade separation there. So those are two major points here in the East End that will be beneficial. Unfortunately, we can't do them all because of the cost, but we need to do this in a smart way and just target crossings that have been impacted in our community for decades. So that's what we're doing.
If no other questions, thank you all for being here.
Well done. Thank you.
Overpass at Harrisburg. She was interested in working. They haven't built one, and it's been over 30 years. Because when I lived here, they never built it. You're gonna bring him over. Yeah, no worries. I'm gonna get in on this since I'm the pool.
Jefe, buenos días. ¿Cómo está? ¿Cómo está? ¿Un regalo hace tiempo? Después de la... Gracias. Sí, después de la tarde. Gracias.
Okay.
Aquí con todos. Con todos, con todos. Listo. Jefe, buenos días. Gracias por apoyarnos en esta entrevista esta mañana. Que nos pueda compartir la importancia de del mejoramiento de estas vías tan importantes en el centro de la ciudad, cuando sabemos que la ciudad cada día recibe más población y prácticamente también